Grandma, where are you, Grandma?
I'm here in the attic. What do you need?
I have to do a school project about the origins of our family. Can you help me? Please?
Oh, come here, sit. You see, our family descends from the Austronesian people. Our ancestors found Taiwan as the perfect place to start a sedentary life, given its rich variety of animals, especially pigs and dogs, and plants such as sugar, rice, and different cereals. Because the population started to grow, they decided to expand and look for other places to live. They did so by crossing the oceans and seas, beginning by the present-day Philippines and reaching as far as Borneo and the Moluccas by 150 before Common Era. By this time, they were forming new cultural groups and developing unique languages. Eventually, they sailed towards the islands of Oceania, including Papua New Guinea, New Zealand, and more Pacific islands. They spread over 40 million square kilometers of the Pacific Ocean. Finally, they reached Madagascar, on the east coast of Africa. With their regular movement across the Indian and Pacific Ocean, the Austronesian people left aspects of their culture to the new settlers. One of the cultural aspects that the Austronesian people left was religion. The Austronesian people shared a broad range of supernatural beliefs. They had sophisticated animistic religion with shared ancestors, adoration, shamanism, animism, and the worshipping of important deities.
Grandma, what did they believe in?
When it comes to our ancestors, the native Taiwanese of the mountain, on one hand, the Atayal peace spirits in general. The Bunun, on the other hand, had hereditary male rituals, priest and female and male shamans. And other indigenous groups, the Paiwan, had an extraordinarily developed list of deities, which contrasts with the unclearness of the Atayal explanation of spirits.
Grandma, is it true that they practice headhunting?
Yes, the Tzu people practiced headhunting. This practice was executed for reasons of ritual and prestige. Headhunting consists in taking home the head of the victim after killing that person. This practice was introduced to the non-Austronesian speakers of New Guinea and other islands by the migrations of the Austronesian people.
But did they all speak the same language?
No, the Austronesian language is one of the largest language families in the world in terms of the number of languages it contains. It is estimated to be around 1,000 or 1,200. Austronesian speakers spread into the Philippines, Indonesia, Vietnam, Hawaii, and Melanesia, among other islands, at an extremely accelerated rate. Due to the incredibly fast spread of the language around the island of the Southeast Asia, questions have been raised about the nature of the dispersal of the Austronesian people.
What do you mean?
Several theories have been raised about the expansion. One of the most popular ones is the out of Taiwan theory. This theory suggests that the homeland of the Austronesian language was Taiwan. The theory narrates the settlement of the Austronesian people in the South Pacific region. This theory was colonized about 3,000 years ago, and the archaeological site of this time includes a material package known as lapita. The lapita material culture includes elements like plain or reddish pottery in a number of basic designs, often crafted, crops and paddy field agriculture, and lastly domesticated animals like chicken, dogs, and pigs. All this shows that since all languages of Oceania belong to the Austronesian family, it was theorized that the Lapita culture represented the invasion of the Austronesian into Oceania. I will call your grandfather now so he can explain you the story of our direct ancestors.
Hey, grandson. Your ancestors were very brave men. Bear in mind that they carried out an expansion when maps were scarce, and what lay beyond the horizon was fairly unknown. Military interactions took place. However, their main characteristics were paradoxically the lack of violence. It is known that our ancestors colonized vast areas throughout the Pacific and Indian Oceans. However, they conquered the oceans not as much through violence, but mostly through a sort of passive invasion in which they settled and peacefully coexisted with the local tribes until they belittled them and homogenized our languages and culture. One of the main ways in which passive invasion took place was through the unintended result of the spread of germs. Our comparatively developed agriculture allowed us to prevail. It is currently known that agricultural societies, through settling and through cultivation, developed a series of bacteria and viruses to which they became immune through exposure and adaptation. Through these means, our ancestors were able to widely establish themselves and absorb the existing societies.
But did the inhabitants of the other islands accept the Austronesian expansion? How did they interact?
You see, since they were able to establish themselves over other communities all across the Pacific and Indian Oceans, it can be assumed that political relations between Austronesians and other societies must have been of a vertical kind. They are believed to have adopted from other communities some sort of writing through the use of tablets and drawings in the sand, which allowed Austronesians to communicate with other groups when they encountered each other.
How did the Austronesian expand it? Did they have the means to be able to sail the seas?
Oh, definitely. Our ancestors had very advanced sailing technology. One of the supposed expansion routes opened by them was the Nusantau trade network, a theory discovered by Wilhelm Solheim. His approach claims that the Austronesians expanded through the Nusantau maritime trading and communication network between the islands of Southeast Asia during the Neolithic. The Austronesian people of Southeast Asia were the first to have a true maritime trade network in the Indian Ocean. They set up trading routes with southern India and Sri Lanka. They would exchange cultural materials such as different types of boats, catamarans, outrigger boats, sewn plank boats, and cultivated plants like coconuts and bananas. And this, my son, my grandson, is the history of our ancestors, explorers by nature who during several millennia moved around the Southeast Asian islands.
Grandpa, in school, teachers told me that international relations began in 1648 with the Treaty of Westphalia. But now I'm confused, because our ancestors, the Austronesian, seem to have international relations. Grandma, what do you think?
Well seen, grandson. Indeed, in school, teachers usually teach that international relations began in 1648 after the Treaty of Westphalia, but your grandfather and I don't agree with that. See, as you have understood during the course of the story of your family, you have seen that the Austronesians were engaged in several relations among different territories, people, and chiefdoms. Moreover, the Austronesian people carried out military and diplomatic interactions in the settlements and in their expansion. They also had economic relations through the trading routes, as well as cultural interactions like the spread of their rituals such as the head hunting. So we can challenge the idea that international relations began in 1648 because we can prove with the history of our ancestors that that is not accurate.